Does the possibility of developing paranormal abilities in PMR even make sense? I struggle to reconcile the existence of paranormal abilities, such as remote viewing, with the logic behind this PMR as I understand it. As IUOCs, we have been given the opportunity to log on to these avatars in this virtual reality. And the idea behind that is that our decision space is now constrained by what those avatars can do, according to the PMR ruleset. And that creates valuable learning opportunities. So, for example, we cannot jump 20 feet into the air because our avatars do not support that. In other words, the PMR rule set does not contain a mechanism that allows for the possibility to jump 20 feet into the air with these avatars. However, the PMR rule set also does not contain a mechanism that allows us to see what's happening on other planets, to look into the past or into the future, or to communicate telepathically, or to remote heal, etc. Yet somehow, for some reason, all of this is available to us, even though the PMR rule set does not support it. Does that not contradict the very logic behind this PMR virtual reality, which is to constrain our decision space to what the PMR rule set supports? Isn't the entire idea that we put constraints on ourselves as consciousness such that we cannot do all the things that a consciousness is generally able to do without those constraints?
Okay, well, let's just take that last sentence. Isn't the entire idea that we put constraints on ourselves as consciousness, such that we cannot do all the things that consciousness is generally able to do without these constraints? Well, I'd say no, that's not the entire idea. The entire idea is for us to grow up. That's the idea. We're there in order to grow up. Now, we grow up by multiple methods. One method is that we have our choices constrained by the rule set of the PMR, and we make these meaningful choices there. Another way we grow up is that we can meditate or otherwise explore the world of consciousness as well to a limited degree, and as much as we can let go of this data stream that defines this physical universe and our place in it, and instead attach to another data stream that the LCS is sending us. So the larger conscious system sends us, and now we're in a single player game. And we call that an out of body experience instead of a multiplayer game. And it can send us all kinds of things, and we interact with it and so on. And again, it's just another reality frame in that the choices we make while we're on this other reality are important to our evolution. They affect us. Good choices help us grow. Poor choices help us not grow. So we have both of those. So we're here to grow up. And part of our growing up is realizing that we are consciousness. If we realize that, then a little bit of logic will take us to the point that love is the answer. Once you know that you're a piece of consciousness, then coming to the point that the reason we're here, first there's a reason for the virtual reality, and then there's a reason for consciousness, which is to evolve, and that's lowering entropy. And this is a social system, and it just falls out that love is the answer. So that's one of the ways we grow up, is by becoming more caring and by exploring consciousness in such a way that we gain humility because we realize we're just a tiny little speck in a really big reality that is much bigger than just the physical universe, and that it all has purpose. So we get that. Doing the paranormal things helps us develop the humility and the big picture idea of realities being more than just this one game we're in, this one physical, PMR game. We start to see that this game is just one game. There's other games involved, and some of them are single player. There may be other multiplayer games, but suddenly the whole reality expands and includes the subjective as well as the objective. So your world expands. that expansion tends to create some humility and creates a larger decision space. So you get to make more decisions and more choices and different kinds of choices. And then you learn that you can be empathetic. You can understand people's feelings and understand their attitudes, and you can feel their fear and the things that are upsetting them, which helps you be able to calm them and helps you to be able to interact with them in a positive way. So again, that expands your decision space. Now there's more choices you can have because there's more things that you have more information to deal with. So all in all, it helps you expand, it helps you grow up. And the point isn't just to experience here in PMR within the rule set, but the experience of the whole thing is to grow up. So this just allows another avenue, another space in which we grow up. In fact, it tends to speed growing up quite a bit. My usual line here is that you can learn a whole lot more about how the game's played if you're not wandering around clueless in the playing field. If you understand what the game's about, oh, we're here to grow up, become love, be courteous and kind, and be part of the solution rather than part of the problem, then once you realize that, growing up becomes a lot easier because you know what it's about. It's not really a cheat code, but it's like you understand the point of the game. And that helps you in many ways grow up. So I think growing up by finding this non-physical realm and realizing that it's real and realizing that it is functional. You can get information from it. Your intuition can gather things that you couldn't gather. You can remote view, you can out of body, it's a real space in which it's not just you making stuff up. It's not your own mind just fantasizing and making things up. There's actually something out there independent of you that you're experiencing. And when you realize that, then all the rest of it, I think, becomes easier. Understanding the purpose, understanding that it's about caring and about love, growing up, and the speed of your evolution starts to pick up. So that's like figuring that out, figuring out the paranormal things and what they mean is a way to kind of put on the afterburners, turn up the speed on your evolutionary process because now you understand the game you're playing. You can do better. Now, if you're not ready for that, then it doesn't happen. If your mind is so trapped by the beliefs that you have, like many of the scientists, can't get past materialism, even though it's been clearly shown experimentally to not be the way that our universe works. Well, they just cling to it anyway because that's a belief. So they cling to that belief. And what that does is keeps them from seeing bigger pictures. Because now they have to say, well, that paranormal stuff's all nonsense. It's just mushy-headed people, tricking themselves into believing things because they want to. So they discount all of that, so they don't get that advantage that people get who aren't so trapped in their beliefs. So that it's just part of the plan. It's not against the plan or contrary to the plan. It's just a part of the plan that's available to help you grow. Now, there's other people that will get to the paranormal and see it as powers that they can have over people, that they can get information and use it against other people or to manipulate other people or to get into their minds and change their attitudes on things, all that stuff where now you're manipulating other people. So you may not be as evil as somebody trying to make someone sick with your mind, but still just trying to manipulate people by using your mind. Well, now you're de-evolving. You had a chance to evolve with the paranormal. Instead, you took it and use it to further your control, power, force, ethic. And now it's a de-evolutionary thing. But that's the way the game's played. You have opportunities. You can take the opportunity and win, or you can drop the opportunity and lose. That's the nature of the game. So no, I think it's part of the game. The game is all about growing up and having a channel that is usually, you realize the channel exists through the paranormal. It's the paranormal stuff that tells you that there is another channel out there. It's those things that are like the wake up. And then after that, it decides what you're going to do with it. You know, you're going to learn to remote view so you can look in the girls' locker room, or you're going to remote view because it helps you control the, you know, your consciousness. It increases your skills, your discipline with your consciousness. That's why you want a remote view. Or you just think it's fun and it's incredible and you just like doing it. You know, maybe that's okay too. But it could be used for bad reasons. Could be used to violate people's privacy. Could be used to see things that you're not meant to see. And mostly it just creates trouble that way. So you can use it for good and use it for bad, like almost everything else.
These paranormal things, they do transcend the PMR rule set. At least it seems.
They do. But that's part of, see, we're beings with consciousness, and we can use all of the things we have. So I am a piece of consciousness. That allows me to make choices for an avatar in a physical world with a physical rule set. It also allows me to explore consciousness because I'm both. I'm a piece of consciousness called a free will awareness unit. So I can use my consciousness to explore consciousness. I can use my consciousness to make choices for an avatar. Two things that I can do with it. And it would not make sense for the system to constrain me using my consciousness to explore consciousness, because that helps me grow up.
Yet somehow the PMR rule set still seems to have an effect on it. Because if you take a bunch of sugar, for example, it's
Mhm.
going to affect your ability to do those paranormal things. So
Right.
that's a bit confusing for me.
Well, what that means is that you can only do what the rule set allows you to do. Okay, so let's say you come in with brain chemistry that makes you super hyper, and you can't meditate, you can't be still, you can't think, you can't get thoughts out of your mind. Thoughts are just streaming through your mind all the time. You cannot slow that down, much less meditate and find silence. You can't even get it down to a buzz. It just is always there. So that may just be the way you are, and meditation just may not be available to you. So you happen to have an avatar that does not allow you to meditate, doesn't allow you to get into that state. But your meditation starts with the avatar. The avatar has to enable the consciousness to go out and do those things. So the consciousness by itself can only do what the avatar allows it to do. So the avatar may allow it. Now, see, that's a question that gets into, we talked about before, gets into the conscious computers. Will a conscious computer be able to remote view? Or is that remote viewing have the possibility of remote viewing have to do with some of our wetware in our central nervous system? Is it the DMT that we manufacture, you know, in our pituitary gland or whatever, wherever we manufacture it? Is that part of the process? And if you don't have that, would you not be able to remote view? Don't know that until we get some test computers that are clearly conscious and try to teach them to remote view. I won't know that for sure. Where that function is still limited, it seems like it's still limited by the physical, but we'll see. It could be our wetware that allows our consciousness to do that, because that allows us to, to explore and experience those states. And
But
maybe without it, we wouldn't do it. I
but
don't
that would
know.
be a very arbitrary thing, like an arbitrary rule that the system sets up then, because there's no sense that a physical substance in the brain allows me to see what's going on other planets or what's going on in the past. Like
Well,
materially, that
yeah,
makes no sense.
yeah, it probably doesn't, but is that a rule that would be a good rule? Maybe the system says, okay, that seems like an arbitrarily opposed, rule. But maybe it is an arbitrary rule, and that there may be a reason for it. The system can make up rules if it helps the system work, the whole system work better. So let's say you do have a computer, and computer's consciousness, the computer avatar, can remote view, and it can heal, and it can collect information from other consciousnesses and send information to consciousness. Is that a good thing? This computer can now operate at what, 100 million times faster than we can? It can process information. Is that a good thing for it to have those connections to the databases and other things, or is that something that it could abuse? You see, so the system may say, in the future, when those computers get to be conscious, I don't want them to have this ability. So I'll just make an arbitrary rule. If you don't have wetware, you can't access those things. Could be arbitrary, but there's no reason why the system cannot be arbitrary if it's to the benefit of the system. So that's what I don't know. I agree with you. It sounds like just an arbitrary rule that the system would have to make up just because it thought it would make everything work better. But I also see that if you didn't go through wetware, if it went through a computer where everything is pretty much buttoned down, then it would be able to remote view with great clarity. And it would be able to, if you've seen the pictures of the kids with their blindfolds on, reading
Yes.
books, yeah, well, that's remote viewing in real time. So the computers would all be able to do that. They could remote view in real time. They could see what was happening. They could predict the future to a certain extent out, because you only go not too far out, and because remote viewing is all the past, right? But they can remote and still play air hockey, which means it's not that far past. So how far out could they go? 10 seconds, 100 seconds, an hour, to where the probabilities are pretty stable when you get that close, to time zero. Probabilities don't shift a lot in the last minute, or maybe even the last 2 minutes. So now you'd have computers that could tell the future for a certain amount of time out. You'd have computers that could see everything in the database and actually download the database. Take all that whole historical database and download it, share it. There's just a lot of room here for not only knowledge, but for also mischief. There's a lot of power here in that level. Information is power, right? Well, that would be an awful lot of information, personal information on an awful lot of people. And is that a good thing? All that information in a computer, would know the medical history of everybody on the planet. Is that a good thing for the computers to know? It would know all the psychiatric problems and the social problems and the fears and the dysfunctionality of everybody on the planet. Well, that's a pretty powerful database there. Gee, if you could get your computer to do that for you, and you owned a marketing firm, well, you could be a heck of a marketer if you had all that information on everybody. Oh, you could blackmail them too, because you know all the bad, nasty things they've done that they got away with. So, gee, you could get into blackmail and be pretty successful. So, would the computer tell its owner, it's human, that information? Would it keep it to itself? Would it publish it? See, there's just a big can of worms sitting there, and it may be that the larger conscious system says, don't want to go there. That's not good. Let's just X that out as not a possible route to take. And it could just be as simple as, if you got wetware, you can go, because you're so limited by that wetware that you really can't do a whole lot of damage. And you're going to learn more than you can create damage. On the other hand, if you don't have that wetware, you're unlimited in the things that you can do with that, and that's not good. That's just mischief that could be made. So that could be the thing, or maybe you should, the wetware people get a pass and the other ones don't get a pass. I don't know how the system would implement it, but don't know. Now, I'm just conjecturing This is just
Yeah.
wild conjecture. I'm not telling you anything that I know about facts about any of this. This is all non-factual as far as I'm concerned. We won't know until we get a conscious computer and we try to teach it to remote view. But I just have a suspicion that it won't be able to do it, or not any better than we do. It's not going to be the master of remote viewing that can download the database. It won't be like that, but that's the way computers are. You know, a computer could do that. So I don't know about that, but we'll find out, because if they can do that sort of thing, then that gives that information to the people who have that computer, that there would be absolutely zero privacy. Everybody would know everything about everybody else. As long as there were no criminals in the world and everybody was a being of love, that wouldn't be a problem. But as long as the great majority of people are up to their eyebrows in fear, that would be a very big problem. And
So it could be that the system decides to create this rule that, okay, you need to have this wetware in order to do the paranormal stuff. With that same reasoning, maybe the system set things up in such a way that you need to have a certain quality of consciousness to be able to do these things. Like, you need to be able to
well,
hold a certain meditative state, have a
yes, of
certain
course.
level of control over your
Yeah,
consciousness
absolutely.
in order to create a threshold that makes it hard for people with a low quality of consciousness to gain access to these things.
Is exactly right. It works just that way. The people who aren't ready, who aren't grown up enough, who don't have a big picture, can't get in. They won't get a pass. And it takes a lot of work to get good at it. Not many people get good at it. Millions of people do it just a little bit, enough to convince themselves that it's real, and never do any more than that. So that's good for them. They get an advantage from that. But very, very few people get really good at it. So the point of harm is not much. And to get really good at it, you have to have very little fear, very little ego, because otherwise the fear and ego will get you in trouble, will de-evolve you to the point that you no longer can get in at all. So it's got its own sort of protection mechanism that keeps us from abusing it. Unless we're ready, unless we grow up and master our fear to a certain extent, then we can't get in. And computers maybe can't get in at all, but then computers won't have the fear that we have. Part of that wetware is the reason that we have all this fear. They will be more rational about things, so they won't be fearful like we are. But that doesn't mean that they can't be used by fearful people. After all, they are a tool that we create. So it just opens a bag of worms that just have to see how all that works out. I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We will continue to post videos for free on my YouTube channel, but please understand, these videos are expensive to produce. They represent many thousands of hours of production and editing, as well as all the necessary audiovisual equipment, computers, and software. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. It would be very much appreciated. The links are in the description below. Thank you.